Welcome to Twisted Remedies. I'm your host, Justin Couture, and this is a podcast about the benefits of jiu-jitsu and other non-traditional remedies in trauma recovery.
Welcome back, everybody, to Twisted Remedies podcast. I am here, excited to be here today. This one's going to be fun, I think, with Professor Matt McPeake from Canada. I believe you were my first Canadian guest, if I'm not mistaken. So, awesome. Welcome, international. Hopefully, this will improve whatever other craziness is going on out there. Matt is a second-degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He's a Jay Page's affiliate, the Jiu-Jitsu coach at Brown's Martial Arts and Horizon BJJ in Waterdown, Ontario.
Correct.
I believe.
That's a lot. It's a mouthful.
Yeah, and senior director of industrial solutions for what my limited research showed was like $1 billion international company. So
yes,
that's pretty cool. I don't know that anybody else has checked that box, but that's a lot of cool stuff. So thanks for coming on the show and welcome.
Yeah, great to be here.
Any of that stuff you want to expand on? Obviously we'll get into talking about your background in martial arts and all of that, but
yeah. So I guess I don't do jiu-jitsu full time as a job. As I say, I'm a senior director, so I have a complete sales organization that I manage Monday to Fridays for both U.S. and Canada. So that keeps me busy. So the jiu-jitsu's, I do spend quite a bit of time during the week doing that and traveling around, but it's kind of my escape from reality and kind of that mental health break. Getting out there and doing something that's completely different from the corporate America world.
Yeah, I would imagine after a full day of that, you're ready to get on the mat.
You're ready to go, especially the last month or so with all this tariff stuff going on back and forth. It's had a lot of interesting times for work. So it's good to get that break to just get your mind off of that.
Yeah. The mental health piece obviously is a big reason why I'm doing this, and there's nothing like it.
No, and I think people get that. When you talk about the mental health aspect of jiu-jitsu or I guess any really physical activity, and I know we kind of can talk about that a little bit later on too. To kind of you've got to be 100% focused on what you're doing, and if you're thinking of anything outside of it, right, it becomes detrimental. And it doesn't mean that you have to have, a whole bunch of trauma in your life. I think we all have something going on in our life that affects us emotionally, mentally, physically. You've got something going on. And that's one of the things that really drew me to martial arts, but specifically Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, was that hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever it is you're training. You're having a bad day, you're having a good day, you walk into the gym, you get on the mats, and you kind of completely forget about that. And to me, it's kind of a reset. And then, if you're having a bad day, maybe that day's not as bad when you come out of it, and you've kind of had a clear mind. So I think it's an important aspect to it overall from the physical side of it, but I think also from the mental side of it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. How did you get your start in martial arts? What was the path?
So I started martial arts when I was 8 years old. I got into judo, and I did judo, till I was probably in my mid-teens. And the school that I was teaching at shut down. I was a big kid. I was when I was 15 years old, I was about 260 pounds. So I was a big kid. And so anyway, judo was a perfect art for me for that. Big base.
You were throwing people.
I was throwing people around, and because I was a big kid, I had the opportunity. My coach, I was training at a YMCA, and the coach there was training at the local university, and there were a few of us that were there that were kind of older and kind of mature for our age, and we got invited to train with the university team. So the university team was the judo and wrestling guys. So when I'm in my early mid-teens, I'm going in and training with guys that are, in their early 20s, much stronger, much more developed. But it was a great opportunity for me to go in that training atmosphere, so that when I was going and competing in my own age division in judo, right, it was it was almost easier, right? Because I was going against people that didn't have the same physicality to them. So it was fun to do that. And unfortunate, like a lot of stuff in martial arts, politics came into play, and that club dissolved. So I was kind of left out there wondering what to do. So I had a bunch of friends that, I did judo. I had a friend that was doing karate. Another guy did boxing. Another guy did wrestling. So this is all, pre-UFC. We just get together and, in the basement or in the backyard and throw on boxing gloves and, punch each other and kick each other, take, each other down and kind of wrestle around and have fun, kind of doing mixed martial arts before we knew that it was even mixed martial arts.
Right.
And when I got into university, I started looking around again for, kind of doing judo or jiu-jitsu or something, because I was missing it. I was missing the, the organizations, and the skill development of that and having kind of a teacher. So I started training in Hapkido, which is Korean martial art, same kind of lineage through how jiu-jitsu started. So very, very similar to traditional Japanese jiu-jitsu. So I was training with that through university. Also did kickboxing, so North American style kickboxing, so above the waist. Did a little, we had a few guys that were doing Thai kickboxing and all that stuff, but did some amateur fights with the kickboxing. Got into that through university. Continued on doing Hapkido even when I left and moved from. I grew up in New Brunswick on the east coast of Canada, and I moved to Northern Ontario. And the town that I was in, there wasn't really, I was trying to find a place to train. I luckily found a few guys that wanted to start learning martial arts, so I was teaching them Hapkido and kickboxing, and I was still traveling back to New Brunswick and keeping in touch with my coach there. And eventually got my third degree black belt in Hapkido before I, kind of fully transitioned into doing jiu-jitsu full time. But as part of my job at that point, I moved from where I was in Northern Ontario down to here in Southern Ontario, in around the Toronto area. And once again, I was kind of like, I need to find a new gym. I want to keep training. And there was a gym that was teaching, they said they had Hapkido, so I went there. But it was kind of a motley crew. There was a guy teaching Japanese jiu-jitsu, there was a guy teaching judo, there was a guy doing boxing, there was a guy doing Hapkido. So it was kind of this, one day you'd go in and do one, and next day you'd kind of do into the other.
So it was kind of like back in your basement.
Yeah, kind of, yeah. But it was a legit gym, and it was fun, and we were playing around and doing stuff. And after being there for, I'm going to say about a year, the guy who owned it, who was doing the jiu-jitsu, decided that he was going to retire kind of from running a gym. And the guy that bought the gym bought it to start a jiu-jitsu school. So Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu kind of found me in that case. I didn't really go out looking for it. It kind of came to me. And of course, you remember, I started training BJJ like in the early 2000s. So this is, UFC had been out. So, obviously there was a lot of, the noise about, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and how great it is. But in Canada, the first wave of jiu-jitsu didn't happen until kind of the mid to late 90s. And it was a very small scene. There weren't a lot of people doing it. And then I kind of hit kind of that late first wave, early second wave. And there weren't a lot of schools around. So I really hadn't experienced the true power of Brazilian jiu-jitsu. So I thought, well, this is cool. So I remember the first class that we did as jiu-jitsu, and the guy that was a coach, he had a few people that he brought along with him, and there was this one guy. He was, I don't know, maybe 160 pounds soaking wet. I'm like over 200 pounds. I've got judo, Hapkido, kickboxing background, all this stuff. So I'm thinking like, I can handle myself.
Right.
And I think he was like 18 or 19 years old, and I'm like 30. Right. So I'm thinking I've got this. Right. This is gonna be no problem. I think in less than a minute, he was on my back, me on the ground, and he was choking me out. And I was like, shit. I'm like, this is the real deal. Like, you see it on TV, but until you experience something, go, this is a real deal, and I need to figure this out. I need to learn this, right?
And that is such a common theme. Like, everybody I talk to is like, I did these other martial arts, and then I did jiu-jitsu, and it was all of a sudden like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
What is going on? So I've told this on the show before, but I didn't start till I was like 48, and I had been a cop for, almost 2 decades, maybe 2 decades at that point. And I'm like, I can handle myself.
Yeah, for sure.
And then I go to class, and it was a law enforcement only class that our department was running, but my current professor was there, and I outweighed him probably by at least 40 pounds, and he was a purple belt. He just smothered me, and I was like, I don't know this is crazy. I don't know. I don't know. Why can't I get this small person off of me? And I was hooked at that point, and it is so common.
And it was interesting because we had a decent sized group of people in the adult class that was transitioning from the old club to the new club, and over the course of, I'm going to say 8 to 12 months, it dwindled off, right? Because those guys, like they I don't know, the ego check, they couldn't handle it, that they had been training and had it in their mind. They were told that they were these great fighters, and they got into point fighting competitions and they were winning all this stuff, but yet these guys were coming in that were smaller, younger, that were just kind of destroying them, like getting them on the ground, with jiu-jitsu, with wrestling, getting them on the ground, choking them out, arm bars and all this stuff. So there was kind of a quick transition over the year from, new blood coming in, old blood going out. And I think there was only a handful of us that actually stuck around from the original crew. And so it was fun. So we had kind of, once again, this is kind of going back a while. I started prior to social media, prior to YouTube. So there was no open source jiu-jitsu out there. It was what your coach showed you, the VHS tapes that you could buy, from Brazil, or, we went to competition to see what the other schools were doing. Because back then it truly was tribal. It was like, we got our school, we think we specialize in this particular thing in jiu-jitsu. We don't want to give it away because this is the new thing we're working on. So when we go to the tournament, we're all going to pull it on these guys and we're going to beat them, right? So you had to go to competitions or get competition footage to kind of see what the new and latest, greatest, submissions were, what the sweeps were, what the guards were, what that people were starting to play and bring into the game. So it was kind of a fun time because it was lack of a better term, was like fuck around and find out.
Right.
And you had to do that, right? And it was great. And even competing back then, I mean, that's prior, and that's just before the IBJJF came out. So the rules were like chaotic. There was it wasn't by age or belt at that point. It was by, were you training 3 years or less or 3 years or more? So it was like, that was the deviation, right? 0 to 3 years and 3 years plus. That was it.
Absolute based on your time.
Absolute based on your time. And then the weight divisions were, and then they had weight divisions, every 20 pounds or something like that. So it was kind of fun. And you get guys that were sandbagging, guys that were like college wrestlers that were coming and going, well, I've only trained jiu-jitsu for 6 months. Or you'd get some, a black belt in judo, same thing. Well, I've only trained jiu-jitsu for 6 months, and they come in and, they'd smoke everybody. But then you'd start getting the guys that were like the true Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guys. And, you started seeing them work, and you're like, there'd be a purple belt at a tournament, and you're like, whoa, like there's a purple belt here or a brown belt here. Very rare would you see black belts competing, because at that time in Canada, black belts were kind of few and far between. Yep. So it was really neat to be part of that and see that versus now. And that's why I tell the guys now, like, I goes, you guys have it so lucky. Like there's so much. Well, sometimes there's too much information out there, but there's so much access to information out there for you now that, you can sit home and just pop open your computer or your phone. If you're on the train or the bus, you're driving your car, with somebody or whatever it is, you can have instant access to jiu-jitsu techniques, right? Or whatever it is. So the learning has accelerated so much. So that's why I think you see people just advancing through the belts so much quicker. And what a purple belt is today versus what a purple belt was when I was coming up, it's widely different. The fundamentals are same, but there's a lot of difference in the level of technique or the complexity of technique that's there. So it was fun to watch that. So I was hooked to that. We were also training MMA at the time as well. So it was kind of a balance between, one day we'd have jiu-jitsu and the gi, and the next day it would be submission wrestling and MMA. Lots and tons of conditioning, and it was the old school kind of training, like let's beat the shit out of one another, and the macho right. Which I go now, it was dumb. It was a dumb way to do it, right? You get a lot of concussions, you get a lot of hits to the head, you get a lot of injuries and stuff like that. But that's all we knew back then, right? That's all anybody knew. And, when you watch, Ken Shamrock and Frank Shamrock, the Lion's Den, and they would kill each other basically. And so you thought, that's what I have to do. And then obviously we got smarter as we went along. So I was at that gym for about 14 years until I made the decision to leave. And I was a 4-stripe brown belt. Wow. So as I said, it was back then, it was tribal. My coach, it was kind of a weird situation. Not so much, I guess, back then, but now if you hear about, like, there wasn't a lot of cross training. People didn't cross train. So he was very against cross training. It was within the 4 walls. He wanted to be the sole source of jiu-jitsu. Other gyms are doing this. That's stupid. My way's the right way, or whatever. And when you're coming up and you don't know anything, that's what you believe. So when I was a purple belt, I was traveling quite a bit for work. And I went, well, shit, I'm going to Florida, I'm going to California, I'm going to different parts of Canada. Like, I'm going to places where there's a lot of jiu-jitsu. So, without telling him, right, because it was kind of weird. And now when I think about it, I'm an adult. I don't need to ask permission. That's what I tell people now. Listen, I've been where you've been. I understand it. But I think we've all kind of gone through that a little bit in our life with something. So I would go and I would, I check out I'd find out where there was school going to be close by, and I'd contact the instructor and say, hey, listen, I'm traveling for work. I'd like to come by for a class. What's your drop-in policy? And I had some really good experiences. And what it did is it opened my eyes to what was I doing in jiu-jitsu versus these other places doing in jiu-jitsu. And in some cases, I was doing things that they had never seen before, and they were doing things that I'd never seen before. So there was this nice exchange of information. So I was learning new things, and I would come back and I'd kind of plant the seed and I'd let it grow and I'd build it back into my game. So I started doing this more and more and more and more. And guys would start, and I was teaching quite a bit at that point. Actually, I started teaching before I was a blue belt just because that's the way it was back then. But I progressively started teaching more and covering more classes. And so I had some guys that were gravitating towards me because I was showing some new things, some different things. So this progressed through, and I remember hearing about Christian through Globetrot and about his trip and his blog traveling across the world. And I go, that's pretty cool and interesting. I do that on a very small scale, but I like the idea of that. So when his book came out, I read it, and I thought, this is really cool. Like, I like this idea of, kind of being a jiu-jitsu nomad, like kind of traveling around. You got a home base, but you go out on a trip, you travel, and you bring that knowledge back. But at that time, he was only doing camps in Copenhagen, and I think it was in San Salvador. There was some guy that he knew, and they had like a small kind of
that
like
was the first
beach.
one, I think, wasn't it, down there?
Yeah, kind of. That was the first of like the surf and beach camps and all that stuff. And at that time, I didn't have the means to do it. But I thought, if he ever comes to the United States, I'm going. And sure enough, in 2015, he had his first USA camp. And I'm like, I don't care where it is. I don't care when it is. I'm just going to sign up and I'm going to go.
And that was New Hampshire the first.
That was New
years,
Hampshire.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. That was New Hampshire. So I went. So I thought, okay, I'm going to do this, right? I've got to go do this, and I've got to see what this is about. I want to meet this guy. I want to see what this could be. And it was funny going to that first camp because other than some of the instructors, no one had been to a camp before. So we were kind of sitting around the first day, and like, the nervous energy in the room, and you could cut it with a knife, and no one knew like, what is this? Like, is there going to be a pecking order established here? Like at the end of camp, are we going to fight each other to the death for something? So the first day and a half was really weird. The open mats were very tense, and no one wanted to give up on anything. And then it just seemed to be a tipping point after that second day that everyone's like, oh, we get this now. We understand. And then the tension kind of went away, the energy lifted, and everyone had this great time. So I left that camp going, I found what I want jiu-jitsu to be, right? But it conflicted with what my coach was running in his gym. But I continued to travel, do these camps, and so I was feeding that hunger that I had because I had the opportunity to travel, in doing that and bringing that information back. And like I said, then as I got into brown belt, teaching more and more and more, and kind of getting closer to that black belt, and politics were starting to get a little weird in the club. It was already kind of toxic from that standpoint that he didn't want you doing anything without permission, which is weird, but it happens. And I know I'm not the only one that has that story, but he gave me the opportunity to do that, or he kind of ignored it because I was coming back and I was teaching a whole bunch. But then it started going weird. Like,
was he picking up on you were showing or doing stuff that you didn't learn from him? Like,
he would. It's like we had a grading one time, and this guy hit this throw that I would teach, and they go, "Oh, look, that's McPeake's throw," and I was like, "Ooh, like shut up, don't say that." And I'm getting like the cut eye from him, and and so he said to me one time, he's like, and just kind of give you kind of where his mind was at. He goes, you go to these camps, why haven't you invited me? And I said, hey, you're welcome. I can tell you when the camps are, but I said, I'm going on my vacation time. It's my vacation. That's how I'm spending my vacation. Some people want to go ski. Some people want to sit on a beach, right? I go and I do jiu-jitsu, and I've made great friends out of this. I've got a great network out of it, and this is what I want to do. So I said, hey, the next time they announce the camp, I'll let you know, and hey, let's go together. And he's like, well, I don't think I'd go to those camps and be able to enjoy myself. And I'm like, why? And he goes, well, I'm a black belt, so, everyone would just, be constantly asking me questions and wanting to roll with me. And I was just like, dude, you don't get it. And it's kind of one of the cool things that I like about the Globetrotters camps is unless you're on the mat wearing a belt, no one knows who the black belts are, and no one cares other than, okay, that's the coach for the class today, I'm going to go listen. Other than that, you really don't care because no one cares. That's not what it's about, right? We're there as coaches, just like I am with my classes I teach. I'm just there as a coach, as someone that has more experience, right? That knows the language a little bit better than you do, and I'm going to help you get there, whenever you get there. So he just kind of had this weird, this weird attitude towards it. I know he didn't like it, but he let it happen because I was teaching classes for him. I was probably covering at least half of the classes in the gym, and another guy was covering like another 25%, and then he would teach a couple times. But it kind of got weird, the politics, and I had to make a decision. Some things happened. People were talking behind my back and causing shit and stirring the pot, and I was just like, one of the guys said to me, he goes, why don't you just put up with it and get your black belt, then leave? And I went, yeah, but that's not right. That doesn't feel right to me, right? That doesn't feel right to me to do that. So an incident happened, and I was just like, okay, I just made the decision, like, that's it, I'm done. Taught my last class on a Saturday afternoon. Everyone left. I mopped the floors, cleaned the mats up, everything that I did, threw my keys into the mail slot, and then, sent him a message and said, hey, I just can't do this anymore. We'll talk about it, but I'm done, right? So I made that decision. And it was like amazing that this great weight lifted off of me. Yep. And it it sent a shockwave across the gym, right? Like, what the hell? Like, you're joking. When I said, no, I'm done. And, and of course, right away, he was like, oh, I became automatically the bad guy. Right. So a whole bunch of people that were my friends for 5-10 years plus whatever, all of a sudden turned on me. And I knew that was going to happen just because of the culture that was there. I was fortunate enough that, several of the guys that I were close with, they decided to come along with me. So we started training we'd already been training in my garage, which he didn't like. He thought if people are training outside of the gym, they want extra time, they should pay him for privates, which he took 80% of the money and gave me the other 20% to teach the private. So I'm like, why would I charge my friends money to do when they can come to my house, come to my garage, train, we have fun, have a barbecue, have a beer afterwards, and
it'd be one thing if you were using like his facility, but
yeah, exactly
at your own house, that seems
wow. So that's where it started getting really weird at that point, and I'm like, I can't do this anymore. I can't be told what I can and can't do in my own home and on my own free time. So luckily enough, some guys came with me, so we kind of started our own thing. There was like 8 of us, but I went and bought mats, and I put mats in my garage. I put mats in the basement of 2 other guys' houses, and we would just kind of rotate through the week, and we did that until I got to Browns, where I helped lead the jiu-jitsu program there. But everyone's kind of like, well, what are you going to do? And I said, well, I don't know. Like, I just kind of was, and so a bunch of guys at the Globetrotters, constructors of the camp, I would see them every year and they go, how's it going? This and that. So they kind of knew what was going on for a few years before I left. Because I started Globetrotters in 15 and I left towards the end of 2017. So for a couple of camps, people knew what I was going on and they were trying to tell me, they were trying to ease me, you're going to, it's basically, you're going to leave.
Right.
We know you're going to leave.
Right.
When you leave, don't worry about it, right? We've all been through this before. And one of the guys was telling me he had something with his coach and a handgun was involved and cops.
Wow.
So I'm going, okay, my story's not as crazy as some of the stories that are out there, right? But it was a little bit of extreme situation. But anyway, so I was just reserved with the fact that I might be a brown belt for 15, 20 years. Who knows, right? And I tried going around trying to find another gym to train at, and it's kind of a weird situation, at that time that you get a 4-stripe brown belt that's leaving a gym that they were at for a long period of time. What's going on?
Right.
So I was fortunate enough that one of the other guys that was a black belt within our association, I had a good relationship with him, and I sat down. His name's Brian Rumble. Brian's a really good guy, and I sat down, had a beer with Brian, and I told him the situation. He goes, listen, I get it. Right? He goes, I get it. I know the situation you're in. It's a weird spot. Many people had left before me. So it wasn't anything new to Brian. So Brian's like, you're welcome to come train with me anytime you want. So I was going to train with Brian and his guys and learning some stuff there. And then I had the guys that I was training with at home. So I had a good thing going. So I could still train pretty much every day of the week that I wanted to. And I was happy with it. And I was having fun. And the black belt thing wasn't even in the back of my mind, right? It wasn't even in the back of my mind. So we get to main camp in 2018, right? So I'm going in there and I brought some of those guys with me that had left and they're having a blast and we're training and, all the guys that I know that were the instructors that were there and, I'm having a great week with them. I'm doing lots of rolling. I'm getting the shit kicked out of me by all the black belts, but I'm having fun. And, they're asking me okay, you've left, what are you doing? How are you feeling about it? And I said, listen, I'm just having fun now. I'm back to having fun, having a lot of fun doing jiu-jitsu because the stress is gone. And I can just train for me and have fun and do all this stuff. So it was a great week. And at the end of camp, with all the camps, they always do the big group photo. Yeah. And if there's any belt promotions that are going on. So typically what happens with the Globetrotters camp is if someone doesn't have a full-time instructor or they're kind of isolated, they can say, hey, I'm a purple belt now. I've been training for X number of years. I'd like to be evaluated for my brown belt. So all the coaches at the camp will roll with that person and, there'll be a vote. And if it's a unanimous vote, right, the black belt council will then, award the belt at the end of that. So
how often does that happen? 'Cause I know that it says that in the in the camp stuff you get when you're going. I remember reading that and I was like, wow, I wonder how often that happens. But you're I feel like this isn't a story I've heard a lot.
Yeah, so I think early on it happened maybe a little bit more often. Now not so much because there's so many more gyms that are out there, but it happens every once in a while. It does happen every once in a while. So at this camp, I think there was a blue belt and a purple belt that was given out, right? And we're all sitting there, and Christian's at the end. And he goes, we got one more. We got a big one, right? And I'm kind of like, oh, like someone getting the brown belt, like, and I'm looking around like
you had no idea,
no idea at all, no idea at all. And he goes, this is a big one. See, I get all choked up over this, right?
Well,
because because it means so much to me. So he goes, this is kind of the first time we're doing this, something like this. And he's like, he goes, the only thing that's missing from this belt is a maple leaf. And he pulls out a black belt, and I just lost it.
Yep.
Right? I was just like, I had sunglasses on, and I was just like, thank God I got these sunglasses on, because I'm going to lose it, right? I'm going to lose it. And like, even to this day, it means so much to me. And so I go up and I get my belt, and I'm like total shock and surprise. Like, I had no idea that I'm getting it. And it was cool for me because, number one, it was a surprise. I think like a belt like that, it should be a surprise. I know some people, they know when they're going to go get their black belt, and they, even their coach tells them they're going to get black belts, so whoever can come. But I kind of had like my jiu-jitsu family there. There was like, 180 people there,
right.
Cheering this on and celebrating it with me. And I never clued into it all week. Right. And even, I don't know if you've ever met Jeremy Laughlin at the camps. Jeremy's one of the black belts. He's taught at a bunch of camps. He's out of Houston, and he said to me before we went down to take the pictures, he goes, "You got to do me a favor." Right. And I go, "What?" He goes, "Whenever you get your black belt," he goes, "I'm the first roll." I'm like, "Okay." And Jeremy's a big dude. Right. So I turn around, he looks at me, he goes, "I gotcha." Right. So we get that, and I go up, and I end up, they beat the crap out of me for the rest of the open mat. Right. And so I was just like, I couldn't believe it. And literally the next morning I went to get my car. I sat in my car and I just bawled. Right. Because this major weight, like it's a major accomplishment. But this major weight had been lifted off my shoulders. Like it felt like the shackles were completely off now, right? That I achieved something which was kind of cool, like no strings attached. Like there's a little bit
of vindication in there. Like
but it wasn't even vindication. It was just like I totally let myself go to the situation and just was enjoying jiu-jitsu. And here's a group of people that I knew, that I trusted, and it wasn't one person, and it wasn't attached to, oh, you're going to get a black belt and you're going to pay me $500 and we're attached to this, right? There was no expectation of it and that's what I love what Christian does with this. There's no expectation other than you deserve it. So this is you've earned it. It's your reward. There should be no leash attached. And I think Chris Howder's talked about that before. Like when you give someone your black belt, you're giving them their freedom, right? It shouldn't be seen as a leash. And that's what I felt like it was going to be if I had stayed at that club. So it was great. Now, I knew that the news was going to get out that I got my belt. So I called my old instructor, right, out of respect. And I said, "Hey, listen, I just want to tell you, I got awarded my black belt. Just wanted you to hear it before it got out there or whatever. And, thanks for the years that we had together. I know we split, but, just to be professional about it." Right. And of course I hear back, cause I still had friends that were training there, hear back, see, look, McPeake was just chasing his belt. He got his belt from a bunch of nobodies. That belt means nothing, blah, blah. So he just turned it into kind of a vindictive thing. So I was like, whatever. So that was kind of like how I got to my belt. So at that point, I'm like, this is what I want to do. This is how I want to do jiu-jitsu. I want it to be kind of open source, affiliation without affiliation, cross training. People can come and go. I always tell people, like, I think it's important to have a home base. Like you have to have a home base and a coach and a team that's going to keep you honest. But go out, go travel, go cross train with your buddies, but bring that back, right? And I think that was it's kind of a fallacy for some coaches that they think they have to know everything, and I'm not going to know everything, right? Like leg locks is not it's not what I focus on, but I know enough about leg locks that I can teach you the basic stuff about it. But if you tell me, like, listen, I got a hard on for leg locks, I really want to learn leg locks, then I'll help you find somebody that's going to be good for you to teach leg locks, and I'm going to tell you, go learn those leg locks, bring it back here, and teach everybody else.
Right.
So it's been really cool doing that. So that's how it kind of got me into traveling now around the world and teaching at these camps, and kind of gave me that opportunity to kind of, train with Brian and his group, and then start this program at Brown's, which was going really good until COVID hit, right?
Oh, yeah.
So COVID hits in Canada, and, it was bad everywhere, but in Canada, it was ridiculous. We were in major lockdowns. They drug out the COVID quarantines and everything longer than I think any other country did. I think we were probably like the last major country to stop it. But we made a conscious decision that we were going to continue to train. So we blacked out the windows. We had a back door with a secret knock.
It's like a speakeasy.
It was kind of like a speakeasy. So it first started out that we kind of limited, and we'd have like 8 or 9 guys show up, and we were doing a couple days a week. And all of a sudden, the word got out that, hey, this gym and Matt's training here. So we started having people from all these other gyms starting to come, like call me like, hey, are you guys training? And I said, listen, I go, number one, we're going to keep COVID politics out of it. Here are the rules. If you're sick, stay home, right? If someone in your house is sick, stay home. If you've got someone who is, high risk, just stay home, right? It's not worth it. And we didn't have any issues. We had no issues throughout the entire thing.
It's funny when you throw common sense at things, how it just kind of plays out the right way.
Yeah, common sense. Let's do something that's healthy for us, right? Yeah. And so it was the common sense side of it. And, it got to a point where I had to start turning people away. Because I remember one night we showed up, we had like 25 people in the gym. And I'm like, guys, this is too much. This is too much. Someone's going to call and say something. So we would kind of cap it between 15 and 20. We were training 2 to 3 times a week, and it was great. So, out of that bore some new friendships and some new and some new connections. And one of the guys that had been training at Rumbles brought one of his buddies with him. Now, his friend, I think Aaron Esden, you probably remember Aaron from Arizona camp. So Aaron had been training, and his coach, I guess, decided, through COVID that he was kind of done with jiu-jitsu. He wasn't going to do it. He wasn't sure if he was going to open the gym back up. And Aaron was a purple belt at the time, so he was kind of like, I don't know what to do. Like, maybe I quit jiu-jitsu too. And Dane was like, no. He goes, I want you to meet this guy. Just come with me. So Aaron came out to a couple of times, and we started talking about what you do. And I said, listen, I go, I'll support you, right? I go, that's my philosophy. And I told him about the Globetrotters. I said, I'm here to help anybody. And if I can help you for a year, I help you for a year. If this becomes a 20-year thing, this becomes a 20-year thing, right? I just want to help anyone that I can in their journey, however I can. And so Aaron decided that they were going to open a gym in London, Ontario, which is about an hour and a half from here. So I said, I'm here to support you. So he opened the gym, supported him with that. There was a few changes and, moved locations. And, that school, it's Platinum Jiu-Jitsu in London, which is now the official J Pages Canada HQ that we've got there. And Aaron started with, I think, like 8 students, and now there's over 150, right? In a little over 4 years. And so it was a great relationship. Aaron's my first black belt. We're going to have a grading in May. He's already got one other black belt at that school. We got 2 more guys we're probably promoting to black belt at that time. He's awesome. He's got a good army of purple belts. He's got some brown belts. He's got a sea of blue belts, and he's got a ton of white belts. So it was a great experience for me to be able to help him cultivate a gym in an environment that is kind of different than any other gym that's in the London area. So when we have open mats there, you have people from all the other gyms coming there. And so it's kind of cool, but he kind of took the same Globetrotter kind of attitude. Keep the politics out as much as you can, make it fun. If people want to compete, they compete. If people don't, they don't. But still, it's, don't compromise your jiu-jitsu, but we're not trying to kill each other. So it's a really cool, and anyone that walks into that gym, and I Aaron might be a good guy for you to talk to as well. He's got this huge mural on the wall that just kind of calms you down. Like, you walk in and you go, like, this is just kind of
I've seen that in videos or pictures.
Yeah, it's got the big turtle, and then it's got the pigeon and all that stuff. And everyone and the symbol of the gym is a pigeon. And everyone goes like, what's the pigeon? And I go, well, if you know, you know. And so people go, no, like, what's with the pigeon, right? And I said, well, I'm the pigeon, right? I'm the pigeon. And they go, what do you mean you're the pigeon? I said, well, you see all these, like, everyone's got like a gorilla or a shark or some kind of like, macho juiced out, animal, about tearing. And I go, and that's not what jiu-jitsu is about, right? We talk about it's a gentle art. It's for everyone. And I go, that to me is not very inviting, right? If I'm someone, and people don't get it. I go, if I'm someone, for example, if I'm a woman that's been in an abusive relationship, or even I'm a man that's been in an abusive relationship, I've had some kind of trauma in my life, right? And I see that may trigger things. I want it to be welcoming for everybody. And the joke was that, I do yoga as well. So I was always using kind of, yoga poses in jiu-jitsu. And one of the things I always do is kind of like the pigeon pose in yoga. It's it's a great position, and you see it. You actually use it a lot in jiu-jitsu. So I would always call things like, I'm going to go into my pigeon guard, or I'm going to use the pigeon shotgun armbar and all this stuff. So that's how the joke went. So it came to the pigeon. Aaron like used the pigeon as the symbol for the gym. So I thought that's kind of cool, right? Because no one thinks like a pigeon's not aggressive,
right?
But you think,
they're
what?
Not very threatening when you look at them.
It's not threatening, but if you look in World War I, World War II, pigeons were used to win the war, carrying the messages, right? So it was kind of a cool thing and a fun thing to do. And actually, I just got a tattoo recently, and it's on my left calf, and it's a pigeon standing on two skulls with roses. And I always tell everybody, they go, "What is that?" And I go, "It's my jiu-jitsu tattoo. That's not a jiu-jitsu tattoo, right?" If you know, you know, right? So it was kind of a cool thing, to kind of do with that. And, the turtle is, kind of homage to Pritt and his defensive, jiu-jitsu. And then inside the turtle shell, Jay Page's logo's in there. So it's a really cool mural to kind of look at and see. So, it's been really fun to, go from when I left to basically having nothing and to see how I've been able to help others build. Like I always said, right now with my job, I don't want to own a gym. That's not what I want to do. I don't want to own a gym. I don't want that hassle of it. But I like being able to go and teach and to be able to coach. So Aaron runs the gym in London. Jeff Brown runs Browns in Waterdown. They're both black belts under me, and I just help them, right? So when I'm there, I usually, I'm usually the one that's leading the class and teaching, but not always. But I go, but it's up to you guys to build the culture that you want. And I'm just there to support you guys in any way that I can. So it's kind of been cool to bring them along on the journey too. And, it's not, that style's not for everyone, but I always tell people, open a gym, build the culture that you like, and the like-minded people will come to you. And if someone walks into your gym or someone just says, I don't jive with your training style, your teaching style, that's fine, right?
Yeah.
Think about how many teachers you had during school. How many of did you really catch on to and go, that teacher's really cool? Probably 2 or 3, right? Out of the dozens that you've had. So I always tell people, find a gym, number one, that the schedule works for you. That's important. That it meets your needs as far, do you want to compete? Do you just want to train for whatever reason? But the number one thing is do you walk in, is that culture is right for you? Is the coach, how the coach is doing jiu-jitsu, is that how you want to do jiu-jitsu? How the people are training and treating each other, is that what you want to do? If you don't want to go home broken and beat up every day, don't go to a gym where they beat the crap out of one another. Right. You're not going to have fun, right? There's much easier ways to stay in shape and get fit that don't require surgeries and surgeries and abuse and visits to the doctor. So that's kind of cool. Kind of seeing that, and it's kind of a fun thing to do when I travel, because I get to walk into, usually before COVID, I would hit, 20 different schools on my travels.
Wow.
So I would so part of it for me was, what are they doing for technique? But the other thing was, for me, was, how are they teaching? How are they teach here? And I know one of the questions you had for me was about my teaching style. So I was trying to figure out what are the common things there? What's the easiest thing to do or the most effective way to kind of put together teaching so that everyone in the room, regardless if you're a brand new white belt or you've been a black belt for 6 years, you can get something out of it. And, I came up that old school way, wrap, drill your arm bar both sides 50 times and switch to your Kimuras and do all this stuff. And that's boring, right? I think there's a little bit of a place for that when you're beginning, just to kind of get the idea of how a technique works.
Well, and how your body moves. And
how your body moves, right? So I think body movement and all that stuff is very important at the beginning. But as you progress and you get past that, it's very hard to, you're doing a technique and going, oh, now I'm stuck in that position that blue belt, first stripe, technique number 3 works for, right? And you're kind of thinking that way. So I was like, that's a hard way to learn. It's a very difficult way to learn. And I know there's a lot about ecological training now and constraint-led. And I read those books years ago. Like years ago, I read those books when they first came out. So I think I've been doing kind of a hybrid of that for a while. So I call mine, I teach conceptual jiu-jitsu. I want to come up with the concept, the universal concept of that to use, and then use techniques to reinforce it, to show why it works, right? So as long as you understand the concept, right, there's 100 ways to apply it. And so that's kind of how I teach now. So if you do one of my classes, if you come to one of the schools or I'm teaching a seminar, right, I'll do that. Like I'll pick at Brown's or when I'm training with Aaron, like we'll pick like for the next 4 to 6 weeks, we're working on guard passing. And we'll start from the very basic fundamental concepts of guard passing and elevate it to, as far as we can go for that period of time. You kind of mark down what you got to, and then the next time it comes back to the rotation, you take a few steps back, reinforce the concepts, and then keep going. It's hard to do that in a seminar at camp, so you kind of have to kind of pick, kind of your concepts that you're going to show, and then build your techniques around it. And I think everyone that gets to a black belt, they're doing that, but they don't necessarily know that they're doing that, right? Like they're doing that because sometimes, you'll see people do a technique and they're doing, like they'll tell you, you do step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. But there's things that they're doing that they're not sharing with you that are fundamental concepts to a guard pass, to a sweep, to an arm bar, to a choke, that if you can get that across to someone early on, then when you're teaching chokes, then when you're teaching guard passes and sweeps, they can go, oh, there's that concept. And I first started learning that in judo. And one instructor said, throwing, it's a triangle principle, right? The legs of your opponent are 2 points in the triangle. You're either breaking their posture, they're bringing their head forward to the third point or back to the third point. And I went, okay, I get it now. So when I'm in stand-up, I'm just setting up that triangle. I'm not thinking about, am I going to use a hip throw or an ankle pick or a double leg? I'm just thinking about, how do I get that triangle to work for me? So I started thinking about that, and I was at one of the Globetrotters camps. It was in Maine, and one of the guys that was there, Jay Bell, was teaching this class. And I always enjoyed rolling with Jay because he would beat the crap out of me. Like he could just he'd kill me all the time. And I wanted that because there's no sense of you're going in and you're always dominating. You don't learn anything that way other than, okay, my game's better than yours. So I enjoyed that to see, but I couldn't figure out how he was kind of always pinning me down and keeping me down. And he was teaching a class, I think it was called Prison Rules Jiu-Jitsu or something silly like that. And I totally zoned out of the technique that he was teaching, and I started watching his body position and what he was doing to control. These weren't things that he was saying, it was his body language. And I went, holy shit, I know what you're doing now. And immediately after that, every time I started watching people pinning, the same concept came back again and again and again and again. And that's when I said, this is what I got to figure out. I got to figure out the concept so that if it's a pin, it's a pass, it's a throw, it's a sweep, it's an arm bar, it's a choke, that there's an underlying concept that if you can get that across to somebody, then the book's open for them, right? They read chapter.
Then you can take, okay, I know this technique, I can apply it to this concept. Or I don't even necessarily need a technique. I can get where I want to go because I understand what needs to happen for me to be successful.
You got a check down list. For guard passing, there's a check down list. And as long as you cover everything on the check down list, I don't care what guard's being used or what they like to do with guard or whatever. I know what my check down list is. I just got to check it down. And as long as I can check it down, I'm going to pass your guard. And vice versa. There's a check down list for sweeps. There's a check down list for submissions. There's a check down list for takedowns. And so it really helps at that point because then I say, as long as you understand the fundamental concept, your jiu-jitsu can be whatever you want. You don't have to mimic my jiu-jitsu, right? I'm going to show you how I use my jiu-jitsu to reinforce the concepts. You take that concept for whatever your body type is, whatever you like to do, and you build your own jiu-jitsu around it. So although I've got some guys that are higher level belts than me, purple belts, brown belts, and black belts. There are some similarities, right? But there's big differences too, the way that they roll. And because some of them, and I said the concepts are universal to, doesn't matter if you're white belt or black belt, the concept is universal, it works. Doesn't matter if you're 100 pounds or 300 pounds. The concept works. So that's kind of been the way that I try to convey that knowledge.
Is it how you apply the concept though in your own game? Is that part?
Yeah, it's how you apply it. And the thing is, like, you have to apply the concept. If you don't apply the concept, if something's not working for you, then go back through that checklist and figure out what didn't you check off first. Right. So like for example, an armbar. If I don't, an armbar, any joint manipulation, I have to isolate the joint above and below. So in an armbar, it's my shoulder and it's my wrist. Well, if I didn't immobilize the shoulder and I'm yanking on your arm, you can get up and you can twist around. That's what I missed that out on the checklist. But if you isolate that shoulder, right, now you control that wrist. They can't move. You've got the armbar. So wherever you are rolling around in space, top, bottom, side, whatever weird position you are, isolate the shoulder, isolate the wrist, you got an armbar. So you don't have to think about, I got to remember armbar from guard, armbar from mount, armbar from this position, right? You just go, how do I get that shoulder? I got that wrist already isolated. How do I get that shoulder isolated? Yep. Right? So to me, that's, I don't know if you call it ecological, constraint, whatever, but I just, to me, it gets away from that rigid structure of, do 500 guard passing drills, like, Toriander passes, right? I don't see any value in that other than maybe some cardio, but there's better ways to do cardio. There's funner ways to do cardio or more evil ways to do cardio than that. So that's kind of where I've taken my approach. And I don't know, the people that have come to train with me that have opened themselves up to that, it's worked out well. They've developed their own games. They understand the concepts. And I think the biggest thing that it does to you is that when something goes wrong or someone's trying to throw you past your guard, submit you or whatever, you didn't do your check down list. I don't have to worry about that because you don't have it, right? I don't have to worry about you passing my guard until you get check A, B, and C, right? If I know you've got A, B, and C, I know my guard's going to get passed. I need to prepare for that. But if you only got A and B, I'll just stop you from checking off C and you're not going to pass my guard. So it gives you some confidence either in the attacking or the defending of when is the right time to make the move, rather than, when you're starting out as a white, you don't know what you're doing and you do something and you get tossed through the air and you're on your back and you're choked out in 2 seconds because you don't know what's going on. Right. But when you know what those check down lists are, then you can stop somebody from doing it to you, or you break them down so that you get those, so that when you're ready to do whatever it is you want to do, you're in you've got a high percentage of being able to hit that move, whatever it is.
I think, it's funny as you're talking about like the arm bar and all that stuff. You mentioned Aaron. I can picture the octopus guard class I was in of Aaron's.
Yeah.
You're talking about other, like, I may have told you this when I saw you in Arizona, but my first camp was 22 in Maine, and you had the ref shirt on, and it was from Modified Case of Katami. Yeah. So I came back, and for whatever reason, that class, like, that is a staple. If I get to side control, everybody I roll with regularly knows I'm stepping over. I'm in modified, like I'm going to attack both your arms and your neck and the whole, and it's so fascinating to me that, and I had, I think I was a blue belt at my first camp, so I was still absorbing everything and on the back end of some pretty significant medical stuff. So I was like I don't know what to expect when I got there, and it is so amazing to me. You go from one seminar to another, and instructors from all over the world, and you talked about how, like, it's just, it is, you didn't use the word magical, but it's like a magical experience because there's so much information. It's like drinking from a fire hose, but you can actually, like, you can consume it. I don't know what it is about it. But like you mentioned earlier, Christian has built this. Like, he's on my list too to get on the show at some point. Yeah. He's a busy guy, but
yeah, he is.
I don't know if you have any insight as to what makes, and not even from just an instructor standpoint, but from, I've said this to other people. You put 180 people in the woods that don't know each other from any other like you put 150 business, people.
Yeah.
In, somebody's getting punched in the face. Somebody's, especially with all there's a decent amount of partying that goes on.
Oh, for sure.
And, and that group is just like the chillest group of people you're ever going to run into, and it fascinates me.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it goes back to just Christian and who he is and how he, because people ask me that, like, how do you become an instructor at camp? And I go, and Christian never names drops, but he'll say, he's had some big name people ask about coming to camp, but they want, they got a rider, they want to be paid, they want accommodations, they want this, that, and they want to be in and out or whatever. And he's like, that's not what I want. He goes, I want people, the conversation I had when he goes, I want people that want to be there regardless if they're teaching or not. So I always tell that people, like, go to a camp, show them that you're cool, that you're a good person, right? And that you're, I don't care. When you're a black belt, you're good at jiu-jitsu, right? Even the worst black belt jiu-jitsu is good at jiu-jitsu, right? So I tell people, don't worry about that. It's just, you got to see to make sure you fit into that culture and you're chill. And I think that's part of it. So, I think as instructors, those of us that have been around and have done multiple camps, we understand, like, Christian's behind the scenes always doing stuff so that the people attending camp never, if there's a mistake, never a mistake, but if there's ever an issue, you never see it, right? You never see it. You're there to enjoy, and the instructor's job is to make sure you guys are having fun, right? That you're coming to classes, we're teaching, fun classes that people are enjoying. Open mats are fun and friendly. And there's been a few occasions where some people have gotten, a little out of hand. And it's been, a few people let the radar, the antennas go up, and it's been taken care of. And a couple people take someone aside and say, hey, listen, smarten up. This is not what this is about. Go apologize to this person, and, and we're cool. So yeah, it's very fortunate with the 100+ camps that he's done, the number of people that goes to camps, that there has not been an incident like that. As you say, there's a lot of partying that goes on. People sometimes get a little bit crazy. Arizona, the one year we had the diving contest off the ladder into like the little pool that got a little, that stopped after that because it got a little close. But but it's, I think it's just that once everyone gets there, there's enough people there that are camp veterans versus new people. So right away within the first day, you get what camp's about, right? And it's not about a competition. It's there to have fun, learn jiu-jitsu from a diverse group of people, and have a bunch of fun at the same time, right? Yep. And usually, he picks some pretty cool places to go. So you get to be tourist as well. In Maine, not so much because you're kind of stuck there, but it's a cool place to be stuck for a week.
It's got its own vibe. This was my first time in Arizona in 24, and it is a totally different vibe because
all the camps are different.
Living there with everybody.
And all the camps are different. And the European camps are cool because you're going to some pretty neat places in Europe as well. So I think that's what it is. And I know other people have tried to imitate or replicate what he's done. And I've talked to some people that have gone to some other camps, and they go, they're good, but it's not the same vibe. It's a different vibe. So I think and once again, I know there's some people that have come to those camps and they don't like it because they're like, they think they're looking for competition camp, which it's not. But if you want to get in some good hard rounds, you can get in good hard rounds. If you got 150, 300 people at a camp, you're going to find people that are game for doing that, and you can get in some good hard rounds.
I had a kid. There was a young kid. He might have been from Canada. I think he was a blue belt. He was probably like 19, and him and this other younger guy were rolling. I was watching them. They were going after it, and I was like, "Look at these guys. That's great." Yeah. And then I'm sitting on the mat. He walks over. He's like, "You want to roll?" And I was like, "I'm good."
Yeah. Yes, but not like that.
At that point, I was like 2 months into remission from cancer, and I'm still trying to rebuild. You're in a different speed. Like, I'm old man jiu-jitsu, but that was fun.
But that's cool. But you can find in a group that big, you're going to find the old man jiu-jitsu guys, right? You're going to find the guys that want to do competitive rounds, and you're going to find everything in between at different belt levels and weights. So that's what I like about it. So it's really cool. I've talked to some people, like, they're like, how long do you think Christian's going to do this? I was like, I have no idea, as long as he's having fun. But I think the one thing that I hope that happens is, if Christian's listening to this, when he's done, it's done. No one takes it over.
Right.
It's over and done with, so that we can all get together as we run into each other across the world and go, hey, remember when we used to have Globetrotters?
Right.
Remember how great that was? And kind of reminisce. And I know some people that have been to the camps have kind of started their own camps, and you'll see a lot of Globetrotter people that you meet going and teaching and also attending some other camps. So you've kind of got like these, the cousins of
the spin-offs.
The spin-offs going to it, which are fun, and to do that. But yeah, I don't know if anyone could like take that over for him and keep the same experience. It'd be a different experience. It might be a good one, but I just kind of hope that when he's done, he just shuts it down, and then we can all say, yeah, we were part of that craziness at one point in our life.
I mean, his opening speech to everybody at the camps I've been to, I think sets the tone, and he's such a chill guy too. You're like, okay, this is everybody's having fun and getting along, and this is great. So
so I think like if you had an intense guy, like you had like a Jocko, or then that's everyone's gonna be laying on top. Let's fucking kill each other. We're gonna rip each other's right. Christian just he just sets a very chill mood to it, and even when he's on the mats and he's doing open mats and stuff like that, it's calm, cool, and collective, right? You don't really see any issues. Like I said, I've been aware of a couple issues where we've talked to people just say, hey, like just chill out, calm down. This is what it's about. But I mean, I've done almost 20 camps, and I think that's happened twice.
Yeah, and that's
in my times.
Those are good.
Yeah, and you're talking camps where there's there's a lot of people, right? I mean, you get some of those camps and there's 300 people on the mat, so it's a pretty decent experience. So I'm hoping he does it. He continues to do it for a long time because I love it, and I enjoy doing the camps, and I plan on doing as many as I can every year, as long as I can.
Same here. I want to be respectful of your time, but so you talked a lot about how kind of the turmoil of going through the situation, and I guess just generally speaking, how has jiu-jitsu, how did what jiu-jitsu gives you help you navigate the emotional side of that, the toxicity part of that, or really any other stuff that life throws at all of us? Are there things that jiu-jitsu has given you that helps you kind of navigate that?
I think besides the aspect of you're going on a vacation for an hour and a half, 2 hours when you're training from the rest of your life. I think that's important, right? To kind of switch off everything that's going on, the distractions, and just be focused on your training and surviving, right? But I think the biggest thing, and I tell people this when they first start training jiu-jitsu, or people ask me like, why do you train? And I go, it's being comfortable being uncomfortable, right? Because let's face it, I know there's some people that think life's easy, and some people, they're getting stuff handed to them. They complain about stuff, and we all want to change the world for them, but that's not the reality of it. You're never going to get your way. You got to work hard to get stuff, and even sometimes when you work hard, you're not going to get it. And I think those are great lessons from jiu-jitsu or any sport where there's real physical adversity, right? Real physical adversity too. And I think I think I need that. I need physical adversity in my life to build resiliency. And to kind of give that, some mental toughness there. So jiu-jitsu has been a big part of that. And I think that's what, during COVID, that helped out, trying to get through that. When I'm at work, sometimes I'm at work and like shit's falling apart and everyone's freaking out. And I just sit there and I take a nice deep calm breath. And I just think in my mind going, well, at least no one's like, I don't have a 250 pound, 30-year-old guy jacked up, trying to choke me out, right? I don't have that. There could be worse things I could be going through right now. Right. We'll get through this. So I think that's a big thing for me, is just the physicality of it, the being uncomfortable and figuring it out and being calm and collective. And I think, you learn to breathe, you learn to think under pressure, your problem solving under pressure. And I think a lot of people now just don't have that, right? They go to work, they're sitting in front of a screen all day, they get on their phone, they start arguing with people on social media, or they're just wasting time, not doing anything. And I always say, like, you're only as hard as the hardest thing that happens to you. So if the hardest thing that happens to you in a day is someone gets your coffee order wrong,
right.
God forbid,
right.
if something like your house catches fire, or someone carjacks you, or someone, threatens you, or you get in a car accident, or someone cuts you off, right? God forbid what's going to happen there.
Things come unraveled quickly.
Things come unraveled
your coffee
quickly.
orders, your...
And I think that's what this does here is every day you step on the mat and you're training, you're putting yourself in a situation where it's going to unravel. But things are going to happen. It's about how do you react to it. And sometimes it's going to go your way. Sometimes I'm going to get in the clinch. I'm going to snap you down. I'm going to get my favorite position. I'm going to choke you out. Sometimes I'm going to do that, and you're going to beat me, and I got it right away. Got to be calm, cool, collective, and I got to start problem solving right away and figure out how I'm going to get back on top of it. So I think that's been probably the biggest thing for me, is just navigating those things in personal life and also in business life. And like I said, I'm a little bit weird that way. One of the things I did during COVID, I because I wasn't training as much and traveling, it's like I need physical challenges. So I built a home gym, and the first thing I did that first year, so yeah, I think late 20 going into 21, I said I want to see if I can deadlift 500 pounds, right? Because it was going to be over twice my body weight. I said I want to deadlift 500 pounds before my 48th birthday at that point. So I got on a program and I did it, right? And I said, okay, accomplished. What's the next goal I want to do? So I started thinking about it. I go, well, I got a little heavy doing that. I got up to about 235 pounds, but you had to put in some size. And I go, at some points thinking like this COVID quarantine is going to be over soon. We're going to get back to training. So I got to get my conditioning back. So I bought a Rogue Echo bike, or like an assault bike, the fan bike with the handles.
Yep.
And let me tell you, that is the most soul-sucking, but yet gratifying piece of equipment that I've ever had. And so I started on a journey of, trying to build an engine, right? Like a competitive engine, get to kind of an elite level of cardio and power output. And I found a coach online, John Muljo, he's based out of, I think John's in New Jersey. And he had a Facebook group, and I was talking with him. I said, hey, John, listen, I want some programming here. So he worked with me, and we built programming, and I got my conditioning up to where, I could get up to, riding an hour on that bike. And so there's certain kind of, standards on that bike that you can do for power and distance. And, one of them is to do 1,000 calories in less than an hour, right? So I got myself up to training. I could get 1,000 calories in less than an hour. And, I was on that bike every day. Like, I would literally put, some months 500-600 miles on that bike, right? Wow. And John would put challenges like, this month we're going to do a calorie challenge, max calorie, max distance. So it was kind of cool to have someone that was accountable there, but to put you through some suffering, but you had some milestones for. So I think it was June. It was Father's Day weekend of 21, and a friend of mine has ALS. And so that year, you couldn't do the walk for ALS because they weren't getting together because of COVID. So I said, I'm going to do a fundraiser. And on Father's Day, I said, I'm going to do a 100-mile ride. So 160 kilometers or 100-mile ride on the bike, right? So I got up Saturday morning and I thought, I'm going to go out and just, I'm just going to do kind of a pace thing to see kind of where I need my pace to be, see how I'm feeling. Well, lo and behold, Saturday, I do my 100 miles, right? And I thought, okay. Got out, felt good about that. Sunday, got up, did the 100 miles again, right? So I did back-to-back 200 miles, in that time. So, but what I liked about that bike, it did the same thing for me as jiu-jitsu, is you got to be focused, right? You got to be focused on the task of something like that, especially if you have a milestone that you want to achieve within a time limit or power output or whatever. So I couldn't think of anything else. I had to be hyper focused on it. It's physically draining. It's mentally draining. And, on that ride, hitting that 100 mile, you talk about people in running and marathons, they talk about the wall, right?
Yep.
and I hit that wall, and it's an emotional wall. It's an emotional wall where like all these thoughts and feelings just start running through you, right? And I'd never really felt that before. I'd never hit that wall really before. And I was like, wow, like what's going on here? And it was just like, I got to push through this. And it was grueling. It was grueling to push through it. But at that point, all the training in jiu-jitsu, all the training in the bike gave me that mental fortitude, like, and that resiliency to just kind of push through it. Some people will go like, oh, yeah, riding on a bike, that's kind of stupid, but do it, right? Find something that's challenging to you, that your body's, like your mind's telling you to quit, right? But you've got the discipline to say, fuck you, I'm going to do it. It's all mindset, right? It's all mindset. And I think, motivation, people, January, they sign up at the gym, whatever the gym is, if it's CrossFit, a regular gym, they come to jiu-jitsu, whatever, right? You got motivation. Motivation lasts about 3 to 4 weeks. And if you don't have discipline, you're going right back to your own ways. So to me, it's discipline over motivation every day. There are days I don't want to go to jiu-jitsu. Yesterday, I did not want to ride the bike. The bike beat me yesterday. It beat me and it pissed me off. So today, I beat the bike, right? So you're not going to win every day, but you got to find a way to put through it. So
you got to at least compete every day.
You got to compete every day. You got to strive to be that much better. So I think, that part of it, the resiliency, the discipline, that even though you don't want to do it, it's the right thing to do, just suck it up and get it done, I think is kind of the big learning lessons for me. And, as you get older, as I'm in my 50s now, my brain still thinks I'm in my 20s. My body, when I'm doing certain things, still thinks it's in its 20s. Yep. But when it comes to recovery, not so much, right?
No, same here.
Sometimes I feel like I fought in World War II. So the part of that is being smart, but I just think the physical fitness part of it and the mental part of it too is so important as you get older. Because, if you don't use it, you lose it. So to me, as long as you use it and you get dialed in on nutrition and sleep, and you're doing all the right things, and you're doing your strength training, you do your cardio training, it'll give you longevity in whatever you want to do, right? If you like hiking or biking or swimming or running or jiu-jitsu, whatever it is, that's the other part I think I've learned too, is like you got to take care of your body, and that's something that when we're younger we don't appreciate. And it usually takes, an injury or a sickness, right? Until you go like, holy shit, you know what? We think the human body's strong, and it is, but it's pretty weak too if you don't take care of it. So those are kind of like the big lessons for me. And I don't try to preach to anybody about it, but if people want to talk to me about it, about what I do to stay healthy, excuse me, and try to stay in shape and do it, I'll share all that stuff with people, and and offer my assistance, right? And but I always tell the guys, like, I'll get the young guys in, and we'll be 10 rounds into sparring, and go, who's going to take a break? One of the young, they'll put their hands up, and I said, hey, just remember, don't let the old man in the room outwork you, right? And I look right at him, I said, don't let the old man outwork you, because I take first break when we do our rounds, so that way I'm not taking a break the rest of the time. So if we're doing 15 rounds, I'm getting all mine in without a break, right? So I do that on purpose, just so that I'm pushing myself, right? So that there's no break in, and I know I've got to do it. So I'm a little bit sadistic on that side of it.
Well, you're not only pushing yourself. There's the challenge, the gauntlet is, now we can't take a break. He's not.
Yeah, exactly. So that's part of the fun of it too, is just trying to keep up and, keep up with the young guys. But you do feel it over the years. You slow down a little bit, you get in your 40s, you get mid 40, you get 50, and I'm sure I'm going to slow down a little bit more, but just being smart about your training and knowing your limitations. Like, I told myself when I'm 50, I'll start being selective of who I roll with. I still select everybody. I don't, unless, I had an injury. I just shouldn't say I had an injury. I had just over years, wear and tear on my right ankle. I know you probably noticed. I don't know if you noticed, but like at the last camp, I had my ankle wrapped up, so I had to have surgery at the end of August versus September last year, because my ligament and tendon were gone, like completely. Like my ankle would dislocate on its own.
Yeah, I saw pictures you were putting up like right after surgery and stuff.
So I thought I had great heel hook defenses. It's just that I didn't have a ligament.
There was nothing holding it together.
There was nothing holding it there, right? So, so that was part of it. So yeah, you get in and I prepared myself for that. So I kind of knew when I was going to have that surgery. So I started training for that. I set up my training schedule for it, what I was going to do for my rehab and all that stuff. So I only took 1 day off after surgery. And then after that, I was back in the gym. And I even on the Echo bike, it has posts on it. So I just stuck the 1 foot up on it and I pedaled with one leg and used my arms to do the other one. So because I'm going, if I get lazy for 6 weeks being in a cast, it's not going to be good.
That's a longer road back than doing something.
It's a way longer road back. So but it kept me, because I wasn't training at in jiu-jitsu, but it kept me mentally engaged on that physicality side of it, and it gave me that challenge. And it was a challenge to get around. Like I'm hopping around on one leg, I got a scooter, I'm in the gym doing all this stuff. So it was kind of fun, and then it set me up that when I did get the cast off, it got me back on the mats, I think a lot quicker than I thought, or that my surgeon thought, or that my physiotherapist thought I was going to get back on there. So once again, I just think it's positive thought, just things are going to suck. Just do it, right? Because it's the right thing. Open up that bag of chips is not the right thing. Right. Put them away, right? Or open it up, put it in a bowl, and then throw the rest of them out and just eat that small bowl if you can. But you still have to have your your sinful delights during the week as well. We're fun, right? You got to live, right? You got to enjoy it a little bit.
So you talked. The last question I usually ask everybody. The show's called Twisted Remedies, right? It's like a play on words of jiu-jitsu, and it's been a remedy for me. So I always ask everybody, you've talked about, obviously jiu-jitsu is one of yours. The bike is one of yours. Any other things, practices that you do to like I do cold plunges and I have a sauna and anything like that for you that you lean on?
Yeah, so that was one of the other things I did, kind of a challenge, is like I did sauna and cold plunge every day for 60 days. I really enjoy sauna. I find massive benefit to it. I don't do as cold plunge as much. I'm not 100% convinced from a recovery standpoint it does a lot for you. It definitely does mentally. So I still use that stuff for sure. When sometimes when I'm just like, I'm fed up or I'm bored, like I read a lot. Like one of my things I do in the morning, I get up every morning at 5 a.m. with or without an alarm. I get up, make a coffee, and I made a decision, it's probably 3 years ago, that I was going to read only nonfiction, right? I want to educate myself on if it's politics, if it's history, if it's, whatever's going on culturally, if it's about fitness or whatever. So I consume a lot of information. And when I'm driving and traveling, I listen to a lot of audiobooks and podcasts. So that's part of the, I just made a conscious decision to do that. So I really enjoy reading and that. But, the other thing too, my guilty pleasure is like Batman comics, but also I'm just a fanatic. If I find Batman Lego, because I love Lego, because building Lego with my kids when they were young. So if I find Batman Lego, I buy it, and then I'll keep that for a day where I'm just like, I'm burnout. I need some kind of active recovery, something that's just going to keep me busy and occupied for a few hours, and I'll crack open that thing and I just start building Lego.
Well, so I wasn't sure we'd get to this because we're running long, but who portrayed Batman the best? Oh,
jeez. You know what? I grew up when they started doing the reruns of the Adam West Batman. So that was my first like live action Batman to see. And I love it. I love that campy old Batman. And I think of Cesar Romero's Joker. Like the guy didn't give a shit. Like he had a full mustache and he just put the makeup over it. I thought it was great. Right. I mean, it's completely goofy, but it's so much fun to watch. And it was actually, I bought the entire 1969 series for when I had my ankle surgery. So when I wasn't moving around, I was watching those old school Batman. But I love the 1989 Batman. I remember when it came out. I think I saw that in the theaters like 8 times. Right. And I thought Michael Keaton did a really good job, not only as Batman, but also portraying like the Bruce Wayne side of it.
Yep.
And it's interesting, if you watch those movies that Tim Burton did, like those two with Michael Keaton, Batman's almost like a secondary character, right? Those movies are more about the villain than they are about Batman. And I think they said in those two movies combined, Batman only has about like 30 minutes of screen time out of all. So I really liked him. Didn't like what they did with the next two Batman movies. You know, they got too over the top, and with George Clooney, and like it was too much.
And the nipples.
Yeah, that whole thing. And but you know, and then Christian Bale did it. And Christian Bale was that first time that it was a really dark Batman. And I liked the portrayal of that. Obviously the characters in that were great. You know, Heath Ledger as the Joker was really good. And you know, the Bane character was good. So and it kind of followed one of the storylines in the Batman comics. So it was really good. So I enjoyed that. So far, he's kind of at the top of my list. But when they announced Robert Pattinson, I was kind of like, how's this going to work out, right?
Yep.
But I saw that movie, and I was like, wow, this is... Forget about it being Batman. This is... And even the Penguin TV series. These are great crime stories. Like, it's a crime movie. Like, it doesn't even have to be Batman. Batman could have been, like, Dirty Harry. He could have been any detective that we've had ever. It was just a great story, but it happens to be Batman. So I'm really hoping that they continue that on, because I think they're supposed to do 4 movies in total with him. But I like that very dark, dirty, violent side of Batman, which if you go back and you read the comic books, the Court of Owls and and all those, the series that have been out there, with that. I mean, it gets very dark and down and dirty into, Adam West Batman. Everything's great. I'm a playboy. I have no issues. But you can see, they did a little bit with Michael Keaton, but when they did it with Christian Bale and now with Robert Pattinson, you can see like this guy's disturbed. Like there's something down there.
There's
that's
a reason
deep
he's got a cave with a bunch of stuff.
There's a reason why he's got a cave, and there's a reason why he likes being Batman, right?
Right.
And he likes that physicality of it. He likes to put him through that physical punishment. That's what gets him through the day. So I have great expectations that he's going to be able to carry that on and be a good Batman. And Ben Affleck he was okay, but those movies sucked too. Yeah. They were okay to watch for a while, but I'll go back and watch the 1989 Batman 100 times. I'll watch the Christian Bale ones 100 times, and I think I've seen, the Robert Pattinson one. I think I've seen that like at least 3 or 4 times now, and then
it's like 3 hours long. So
yeah, and then the Penguin series that they did on was phenomenal too. And once again, even if that had nothing to do with Batman, that was like a Sopranos kind of feel to it, like mobster show, regardless if Penguin had anything to do with Batman or not. So I think it's going to be good. So I look forward to it.
Yeah, I do too. Well, this has been an awesome conversation, just like I expected it would. We covered a ton of territory. Are you going to Maine in June? Yeah,
so this year for Globetrotters, I'm in Tallinn for spring camp in April. I'll be in Maine, Copenhagen, and Arizona.
Well, I will definitely see you in Maine. I haven't decided on Arizona yet, but
so Maine's the 10th anniversary of the USA camp. So
that's right.
I missed the one last year because we ended up going to Heidelberg and spending an additional week in Holland after that. So I put priority on that because I'd already been to Maine, I think 8 other times or 7 other times. So it hurt a little bit to miss it because people were like, "You're not coming. Why aren't you coming?" And I said, "But for the 10th anniversary, I've got to be there because I think it'll be a small number of people that are going to that camp that were at that first one.
Right.
So it'll be kind of cool to see who shows up."
I think this is out there, but Joey is going to be there.
Yes, Joey's supposed to be there, yes.
He'll be back in action.
So it'll be good to see Joey. Yeah, it'd be great to see Joey and connect with those people. And that's what I like about these camps. I have some people, like a lot of the instructors, like you'll see a lot of the same people at all the camps, but then there's other camps that people like, that's the one camp that they can do, and they go to it. So it's like a family reunion. You get to catch up with everybody. So it's fun. It's fun. And like you say, every camp's a little bit different. So it's kind of fun to go and jump into that culture of that camp and spend the week there. And then I'm actually headed down to Arizona the end of this week to visit Jay. He's got a seminar going on there with Big Dan. So I'm like, I'm going to go down for a long weekend, check in with Jay, get to see him, do some training down there too, and take advantage of the nice warm weather in Arizona.
That is awesome. Well, again, thank you very much, and it was great to have you on.
Yeah, it was awesome. Thank you for the invitation, and we'll see you the first week of June.
If you've enjoyed the show, please consider a like, a subscribe, or a share, or even writing a review. This helps the podcast grow and gets the word out to more people. As always, take care of yourselves and take care of each other.